whakarongo ki te tangi a te korimako. Kōrero flowing out the hook of force. Kaupapa relevant, kaupapa out of bounds, kaupapa exigent, kaupapa paramount. Nā kona whakapiri mai ki te kaupapa tino whakahira hira whakarongo pi kari kari mai. Areare mai, o Taringa hare mai. We gotta gather up close everybody. Gather up close everybody. Kani move that body. Kani move that body.
Tēnā rā koutou katoa e ngā iwi, puta noa I te ika Māui tiki a taranga whakawhiti te mono raukawa ki te waipounamu. O tira te ao whānui e whakarongo mai nā I o koutou kāinga. Welcome back to this instalment of Taringa. Ko māua tēnei, ko praone gloin, ko...
Te pua heiri e mihi ana kia koutou.
I thought you were waiting for some more theme music to, because there's a bit of delay.
Yeah. No, I thought some dum wonk wonk.
Ko māua tēnei e mihi atu nei, and at the iwi we have a special guest I tēnei terenga o te iwi o te Wiki. We're back with iwi o te Wiki. Nō reira nei māua e mihi atu ana. Ki tēnei wahaki, ki tēnei pūkōrero, ki tēnei tangata, ki tēnei o aku hoa. Tatere McLeod, e hoa e mihi atu ana kia koe.
Tēnā kōrua, kia ora tātou, I ngā mihi o te tauhou.
Me e rā kōrero katoa. Aye, and actually, we could pick a number of iwi to speak about, because I would say that Tatere, and followed closely by Tatere, would be Leon, has this big long email sign-off where he lists all his iwi. But I think the iwi at the top of that list of 10 iwi is Ngāti Kahungungu. So, e mihi ana kia koe hoa mō I wate mai ki te kōrero kia mao o tira ki nā kai whakarongo. Welcome. Ngāti Kahungungu is te iwi o te Wiki. Koe nei a tātai kōrero I tēnei terenga. Ngāti Kahungungu. Before we get into the kōrero about Ngāti Kahungungu, e hoa tātere, have you got a kiwaha for us, for a kiwaha o te Wiki that we can use through this?
Yes, we can. This kiwaha is āpaia, and that is sourced from Reverend Hemi Pōtatau's book, He Hokinga Mahara, Reverend Hemi Pōtatau from Ngāti Rākai Pāka. And in his book, the way that he uses āpaia, the meaning is of course or indeed. So that kiwaha is āpaia.
Āpaia.
Must be sort of similar to koia, ne? Koia marika, koia.
Yeah.
E hara, you know that tūhoi, that trick e hara?
E hara.
E hara.
E hara.
E hara.
E hake. E hake.
E hake.
So you could say, did you have a good weekend? And the reply could be, āpaia.
Yeah, I think so. Like I don't have we don't have a oral recording of him using it, but it's out of the book. So when I sent it to the grammarians, they came back with that's probably the closest meaning, the way he used it.
Paia. Well, I've heard it being used a lot and people sort of dropping the R now, and they're just saying paia.
Paia.
Yeah, so is there a correlation between the two? It's the same thing. It's become colloquialized.
I'm not sure about that paia. I know Pania and Leon, no. I'm not sure if that came out of the kura.
Yeah.
You know, it came out at the same time as those mehetes and the wekinerus.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the way he used that in his book was he spoke about when he went back to Nuhaka with the battalion and he tangi nui reira, so there was the great outpouring of grief, and he said, paia e whāke hoki ngā tau I Ngaroana. So, well, of course, because he had been gone for 4 years.
So I could say, paia he pai ki au te kōrero Māori.
Unless you can sort of use it the same as that e meana koe too, probably, eh?
Yeah, it sounds like it.
E pai ana ki haere, so, paia.
Yeah.
All right, that's it. We're going to use it like that now.
Yeah, that's cool because I've seen the use of it and even myself used it in the sense in where of, well, it still fits, but you think you're saying it's good, where in the actual fact it actually would probably increase the good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Only because of the pai part and that people can probably be mistaken it as just that. Could you use it in a negative sense as a lot of kiwaha can be?
Yeah, I reckon it's the same as that e meana koe, eh? You can use that in a positive and a negative way. So, you know, e pehe, I kore take rātou, paia.
Paia.
Yeah.
Of course they were. You know it.
He's got the stink keke, paia.
Paia.
Well, you know, that is going to be our kiwaha e te iwi.
Paia.
Yeah, and keep a listening, because we sort of have a little competition just amongst ourselves to see how many times we can use it through the kōrero. Hoi anō hoki mai ki tā tātou kaupapa matua I tēnei rā. Iwi o te Wiki, iwi of the week, and Ngāti Kahungungu. And I'm not going to say he iwi hau, but you've got an expanse of rohe there to speak about, Tatere. And, you know, well, people that have some knowledge of Ngāti Kahungungu would know that it extends further than Napier and Hastings. So a lot of people, they'll hear Ngāti Kahungungu, straight away they'll think Napier, Hastings, and that's about it, Hawke's Bay. So maybe if you could just start off our kōrero with the boundaries or the tai whenua of Ngāti Kahungungu, that'd be cool.
So the generally accepted pepa is kahungunu ko tūrakirai ki runga Paritu ki raro. So the northern boundary is Paritu, and you will go past Paritu just before you hit the Wharerata Ranges. So you go up through Rākai Pāka through Mōrere, and you'll see on your right is the Paritu Road, and then that's our official border with Tā Manuhiri. Yep, as we're crossing across. And then the southern boundary is Tūrakirai, which is on Cape Palliser, on the other side of Cape Palliser. But I mean, I imagine that, you know, there's stories how Kahungunu once lived in Wellington, and then, of course, there was the whole journey or the migration of Kahungunu from the Northland down before he made his final home up at Maungakahia in Mahia at Nukutaurua. But in saying that, we also accept the presence of Rongo Mai Wahine iwi in the Mahia Peninsula, who are staunch to their identity as an iwi, and also to the Rangitane people. There are still debates around boundaries, so it's always hard for me, but the generally accepted boundary of Kahungunu is Paritu to Tūrakirai, stretching across to the Tararua Ranges, coming back to the Ruahine Ranges this side, back across this side of Te Haroto, up to Rangiahua, Tamaterangi maybe, heading up towards Waikare Moana, and then back across to Paritu. But I acknowledge the presence of Rangitane, who are their own identity and own tribe, descendants of the Kurahaupokanu.
You made a reference to Kahungunu coming down from up north. Maybe you could whakawhanui o kōrero mō tērā, expand on that.
Anyone who knows Kahungunu, I guess, especially in a pai sense, will know that Kahungunu loves celebrating the tapestry of whakapapa that connects us to other iwi. And we celebrate our history of the Taki Tumu Canoe and the journey of the Taki Tumu Canoe through the Pacific. Well, it was Taki Tumu, and then, I don't know, it must have been cold on the way down, and they started to say Taki Tumu. So the Taki Tumu Canoe first made landfall at Northland at Awarua, and it was there that Tamate Ariki Nui and his son Rongo Kako, who married Muriranga Whenua of the Northland tribes. So that was our first connection into the Northland tribes, but also celebrating our history down through Toikai Rākau. And then Tamatea Pōkai Whenua, Tamatea Pōkai Moana, Tamatea Urehaya, who married Iwi Pupu Te Kura of the East Coast tribes of Hikurangi, and they had Kahungunu. And of course, the Northland people refer to him as Kahuhunuhunu. So they say that their pa was at Tino Tino at Orongotea, and they celebrate that Kahungunu was born there. His first wife, Hine Tapu, was from there, and those descendants from that union. Before moving south to Opotiki, Te Hautaruke, Opotiki Mai Tawhiti, and the descendants of that union. Now I get a bit mixed up now. Hine Tapu, Te Hautaruke, then there was...
These are his wives.
Yeah, there was 8 wives. So Kahungunu had 8 wives. There was Hine Tapu o Kaitaia, Te Hautaruke o Pōtiki Mai Tawhiti, Kahukura Waiaraia Ruarere Tai. And then there was Rongo Mai Wahine was the 7th, Pauwhare Kura was the 8th. Who have I missed? I've missed one of his wives. You know this could result in a muru if I don't get this right.
Your neck is on the line.
No pressure. Hine Tapu, Te Hautaruke, Ruarere Tai, Kahukura Waiaraia. Ka tahira, ko wareware nei au, ruarere tai, kahukura waiaraia.
Apaia, kua wareware.
Ai, gee.
It's okay, you might remember, you know, as we get through. Hine Puariari. How could we forget Hine Puariari?
Hine Puariari. The famous lady said, kaore hoki tērā te hanga o taku tāne, kaore rūpeke mai ana takoto noa mai te nuinga I waho. So Hine Puariari was reputed for saying that her pool was too shallow to take on the full length of her husband's manhood.
That's
and
right.
And she was number 6, and then that was met by Rongo Mai Wahine down in Te Mahia, who challenged her and said, nā te mea rā he kōpua pāpaku, mehe mea rā e taka ane ki te kōpua hōhonu ārapa e tuwhera atu nei poko ane I ki roto. So he said, you know, hine puariari, your orifice is too shallow. If you should come here to the pool of rapa, that is e tuwhera atu nei, which is welcoming you here, then you would drown. So that was the challenge from Rongo Mai Wahine to Hine Puariari.
Yeah, and she knew Kahungunu would hear that, right? And he was like, right.
She did. Pai atu te ko hemu, that gossip travelled up to Kahungunu, and he's like, oh, well, I'll get you. Let's see what happens. So, but the Rongo Mai Wahine people have always maintained their mana and the mana of their ancestress, who was the Marekura of Nukutora. Anyhow, back to what I was talking about. We pride ourselves on our tapestry of whakapapa that connects us to all of the iwi of the motu. So, and a lot of those connections are made through matriarchal lines. Mm-hmm. So, we celebrate our connection of Mahinarangi and Tūrongo, of the Tainui canoe, which of course comes all the way down to the Māori king, Tūheitia. We celebrate Rongo Mai Papa and Tūhourangi, the union of Kahungunu's daughter across to Tūhourangi with the Yarawa tribe. We celebrate Rongo, who married Turiariki Nui of the Aotea tribes. We celebrate, those are the sorts of links that we pride ourselves on.
Kia ora wātu.
But don't worry other tribes. There's not going to be any Waitangi tribunal claims. North of Pari too.
North of Pari. Oh, boy.
Oh, boy.
I think there's something, though, that people, and I'm just speaking a bit off topic at the moment, but I think we have talked about having pānga or connections, and then there's whakapapa connections. And I roto i te ao Māori nā tikanga, a lot of the time when usually it was the wahine that left her tribal area where she was from, and she would go and marry te tāne, and ka noho kē ia ki reira. I mean, it's not like now where you can succeed shares and stuff. Your nanny might have went off and you can succeed her shares. I mean, us Ngāti Raukawa aren't going to come down there and claim, although we might want to, but we wouldn't, through Mahinarangi, those places where Mahinarangi lived. So it's good that people understand that those connections are there and they're talked about, but your ahika in a sense was shifted and they made their own families in other places. So me pai katoa rā kōrero. Paia to that. I've always found Kahungunu to be an interesting character. You talked about one particular characteristic. Yes, I said it in one go because usually I stuff
have to cut it up.
Characteristics. Maybe speak of some of the stories about Kahungunu, the person who was the eponymous ancestor of Ngāti Kahungunu.
You're right, and I mean he was an eponymous ancestor, and quite often people only like to refer to the size of his genitalia and his way with women as a womanizer. I mean, Timoti called him a taha wairere because Timoti believed that Kahungunu's mana was derived from his 8 wives, of which many were of noble lineage. So he said Kahungunu was just a bit of a rolling stone that slept his way down the coast until he settled in Te Mahia. But I think that's a mihi as well. That's Timoti's acknowledgement of the mana of his wives. But I mean, there's a lot of whakatauaki about Kahungunu, which talk about his ability to provide for his people. And that's another way that he wooed Rongo Mai Wahine's people. He was a great provider, watching the shag dive and going down and putting the pawas on his body. And I mean, we all know that pawas was the ultimate fate of Rongo Mai Wahine. We all know the story about the...
Well, I think a lot of our listeners wouldn't know that story. So it might be good to share.
The stories about Rongo Mai Wahine was married to Tamatakutai at the time. And of course, it was Kahungunu's mission to win Rongo Mai Wahine over. And so there was the story about the pawa, that he had eaten the pawa and passed wind and tried to blame it on poor Tamatakutai. So the piho pawa is something that, I mean, I've never ever been one. I don't like it when kia ora te piho pawa, I don't like being referred to as a smelly fart from a pawa. But that is our history. So we pride ourselves on.
They were playing the fart game way back then.
The fart game here to win women over.
Parani, you would have given Kahungunu a run for his money. So, he was a provider.
I probably would have blown Rongo Mai Wahine out of the bed.
You would have blown all the way up to bloody Gisborne. I think Kahungunu was a diplomat. I think Kahungunu, Te Ure Whakaparati speaks about this, the splashing, gushing, spurting penis, whatever you want to say. But I think he was a diplomat. I think he was... I often wonder sometimes if Kahungunu could see now the whole big following, I guess, he's been... Yeah. He's a deity and people wear the Kahungunu name and 62,000 people identify as Kahungunu on the census. I think sometimes, Kahungunu would be amazed to know the following that he has now and how people revere him and his name. And but that's what I know about him. But I'm forever grateful to his his manhood, because if it wasn't for that, then we wouldn't be here.
So we have the blanket term, Ngāti Kahungungu, and then you have sections of Ngāti Kahungungu.
Yeah, so you've got Rākai Pāka, right? That's your first. So you got Rongomai Wahine over in Nukutaurua, Ngāti Hikairo. Then you're coming back to Rākai Pāka in the Nuhaka area. So they've got a staunch identity. But basically it's divided into 6 regions. You've got Kahungunu ki te Wairoa, and that stretches all the way from Nuhaka down to Mohaka and covers back to this side of Lake Waikare Moana. And I'm always very careful when I talk about that boundary, because I have many Tūhoi friends who would love to challenge me on that. Then you've got Kahungunu ki Ahuriri. So you've got Kahungunu down in Hawke's Bay, so Kahungunu in the Napier area, Kahungunu ki Here Taunga, Kahungunu ki Tamatea Central Hawke's Bay, Waipukuro, Waipawa, Porangahau, all of that area. Kahungunu ki Tāmaki Nui Arua, the Dannyverk area stretching down to Woodville, and then Kahungunu ki te Wairarapa, the southern end of the tribe. So the iwi is divided into 6 tai whenua, and majority of those hapu run the affairs within that area. But also in regards to the Waitangi tribunal claims, or actually we didn't go to the tribunal, we went straight direct negotiation. Kahungunu will not have one big claim. Kahungunu sent the claims down to the hapu level, because they believed at the time that the autonomy rests with the hapu, and because we are such a huge iwi, and as we can see with another huge iwi that's having a hell of a time trying to get a mandate, that's why Ngāhiwi split it into the hapu. So that quantum settlement will never come to one entity. It'll go to those respective LNGs, large natural groupings.
Paia.
Paia.
There you go.
You talk about the different hapu. What was it? LNGs?
Yeah, so the large natural groupings.
Large natural groupings. Yeah, I like that term. I'm gonna use that. But so in pre-European times, or in the time of, was there a centre point for the iwi? Or I know a lot of us were nomadic and stuff. If there's a pa or an area, is it agreed upon where that place would be?
So sort of like the headquarters, where would our tūranga waiwai be?
Yeah.
Well, like, first of all, right, they speak about Te Huki's net, Te Kupinga Te Huki. So they talk about how peace reigned throughout the region, and it went all the way from Uawa, from ngā rangi whakatātare ki te, te kupinga, nā kana ngati ka I tana kupinga ka toro e ti porangahau ki roto Uawa. So that net, that invisible net, I guess, went from all the way from Porangahau up to Uawa. So that was Te Kupinga Te Huki, Te Huki's net, which ultimately saw the peace, a long-term peace reigned amongst the people. So there's that. Then there's Taki Timu Meeting House in Wairoa at Waihirere that King Koroki opened. And there's all the stories about when King Koroki went to enter the house and the Waikato elders wouldn't let him pass under the pare of the whare, because ko ngā kuha o Rongomai Wahine kua he mai ana, ne? So it wasn't until they described the whakapapa and said, well, hold on, Koroki descends from Rongomai Wahine. So there's the Taki Timu Meeting House, which stands tall at Waihirere. And my understanding is that was the paramount meeting house of Kahungunu. And then Kahungunu over in Nuhaka was built, and that's just as stunning. I think that's the second largest. I'm not sure which one is the larger one, but they're generally accepted as the largest meeting houses. Then you had Te Kotahitanga at Waipatu. So for the Here Taunga people, the Māori Parliament meeting at Waipatu. Waipatu was the central hub for the Here Taunga tribes. Then you had Te Kotahitanga down in Wairarapa at Papawai in Greytown. So that was the central hub for the Wairarapa people. Central Hawke's Bay, I'm not too sure what the hub was there, but I do know that at Wairoa they call it Te Pārekereketanga a ngā rangatira. So that speaks about the rangatira of that area. I mean, there's 36 marae in the Wairoa district. There's probably 88 all up through Kahungunu. So it's 88 marae. So the hub at the moment now is Waipatu is probably the hub for Here Taunga, but then Omahu is the biggest meeting house. So Omahu, I guess, is our tūranga waiwai. You know, that's the biggest marae. Yeah.
E ko e te whare I Omahu, which is the house?
Kahukuranui.
Kahukuranui, oh yes.
Kahukuranui. So that's a bit. But then you've got Te Hapuku down at Te Hauke, so that was also important. Then you had the Pou of the Kingitanga at Waiohiki. So there was a time that Waiohiki was important because of Tareha Te Moananui. But there is no central hub now, I guess. But there is in those respective regions.
Kia ora rawa.
Kia ora. Paia ngā kōhaurau o Kahununu.
Paia. Well, what about some of these sayings, you know, like Kahungunu, Tuke Mata Nui, and Etahi o nā pepeha, you've got Here Taunga Hauku Nui, Haro Te Kāhu.
I don't really use that ngā tuke mata nui or kahungunu. I mean, I think that speaks about, well, I mean, my understanding is Kahungunu's ability to Well, kahungunu is good looks and all those sorts of things. So I don't really like those. I think it's a bit kumara. So I don't use the ngā tuke matanui o kahungunu. I use the kahungunu matangiro, but I know Rotorua has a matangiro as well.
Yeah.
So that term matangiro comes from the river mouth of the Waiata River, from the Kihitu people of Te Rauhina. So it speaks about kahungunu of many winds. But I think it has a lot of meanings. To me, it means the diversity of kahungunu as a people, such a huge region. But I also think, kahungunu, like any other tribe, when it's time to come together, we can't leave our egos at the door for the common cause and come together. So there's that. There's te wairoa tapokoro. So there's a couple of meanings of that nā te atahu ngā wāhine, ka tapoko ngā tāne.
Yeah.
So, because of how beautiful the Wairoa women were, the men would get stuck in the hole. Not that
Of
hole.
a relationship.
The
But it also speaks about the power of the Wairoa people and how they were revered for the practice of makutu and black magic. So it's another meaning that I've heard of te wairoa tapokoro. And even when Po said to me, Po Temara said that when he was a child, there were two places that he revered due to the heavy practicing of makutu, and that was Waikato and Wairoa. So, those were two places that he was always taught you don't go and throw your weight around, I guess. Then you've got, if we're coming down into, so here taunga hauku nui, here taunga ararau, here taunga hāronga o te kāhu, here taunga raurau haumako. So I believe that speaks about the fertile plains of here taunga. And it is, that's why it's the fruit bowl now. Anything can grow there. Here taunga ararau, I always like to think of that as it goes back to the diversity of the Kahungunu people. There's more ways than one to skin a cat. Me ararau. There's 100 paths to enlightenment. When we talk about the revitalization of the reo, we're all looking for the holy grail. And that's why I said me ararau. We have to accept that there are many paths of learning and retaining te reo Māori. And, if we can just have a ceasefire in the world of pedagogies, then we might be able to make some ground. So that's where I use that ararau. Kahungunu ki uta, kahungunu ki tai, that's another one you'll hear used a lot. The prowess of kahungunu, the skills of kahungunu on the land as well as at the sea, which is the same with the kahungunu people now. I mean, I'd be the most hopeless kahungunu. I don't eat pawa. I'd probably drown if I went out trying to get seafood. I'm such a taupiore. I'm such a scaredy cat, so I'm not sticking my hands under any rocks to get anything. So I'm the most useless kahungunu. I don't even eat pawa.
But you can cook it.
I can cook it. I can cook seafood, but you get me out in that sea and I'm a scaredy cat.
And just so everybody might not know, but Tatere is actually a very good cook. It's interesting you brought up ararau and you sort of made an allusion to some of the reo or the work that you're doing in the language revitalisation space. Kahungunu is doing very, very well, and congratulations to you again for the Supreme Award i te taura whiri. Engari, he pai kia kōrero mo i rā kaupapa, ngā kaupapa whakaora reo. I mean, that is the kahungunu of today. And when we have these iwi o te wiki, I sort of like to spend a bit of time to bit of a kōrero about what the iwi is doing and where you see the iwi going. And even to sort of put you on the spot, he nui nā pepeha kua otike i o tātou tūpuna te waihanga. If you were to think of some today that describes the iwi, what would those be? Kei te wana tonu au i tō tātou kura reo, e rua wiki ka mahu eke nei. Hoi anō, kia kōrero tia e rāhuatanga.
Kahungunu, although we're not quite as bad as how Ngāi Tahu was treated, we're not that far behind. Kahungunu was one of the first tribes to suffer huge language losses, and for many reasons. And I'm not going to sit here and cast blame and go back to blaming the settlers and all those sorts of things, but in some areas in Kahungunu, we're up to 6 generations of English speakers. And that's huge. 6 generations of no reo. I mean, I'm the first bilingual speaker in 5 generations in my family, and my son Te Mauru is the first native speaker in 6 generations. So that just goes to show you the huge loss suffered within Kahungunu. Even though that presents a whole lot of difficulty, it also presents a whole lot of opportunity, because I think Kahungunu has been sort of, yes, we were one of the last tribes to sort of start pushing the reo plight, but when you look back to the 80s, Kahungunu was involved at the inception of Kohanga Reo. We were involved in Te Māori. We were involved in the performing arts revival and all those sorts of things. So even though the whole language revitalization, we didn't actually formalize a strategy till much later, I think there still has been a lot of work that's been done in that area. But I think it's been accelerated in the last 10 years And I'm not saying that because I've been here in my job for 8 of those years, but I think that it was just the time for us to start investing in youth and those sorts of things. One of the biggest things is that we had to stop. We're so fixated on the past, and we're so fixated on trying to be like our ancestors and trying to maintain the sounds of the past, the words of the past, and all those sorts of things. So one of the biggest things for Kahungunu was to accept that we will never speak like the last bastion of native Māori language speakers. Those people were 3 to 4 generations before me. So we're talking about people who were born between 1900 to 1930, of which that's the only generation we have oral recordings of. So we were so hell-bent on thinking that in order for me to be Kahungunu, I had to speak like those people. And I think you and I, Parauane, know that no matter how hard you try, our languages will never be the same as the generation of Te Puia and the generation of Aussie and Aussie Huata, Wee Huata, John Scott and all those ones. So once we got over that and we shifted the focus of the strategy actually, Raukawa had the best model. They embraced any Māori language speakers living within the region of Raukawa down in Otaki, and now they have the ultimate granddaddy of all strategies as Whakatupuranga Ruamano. Mm-hmm. So we had to go back to that. We had to think, well, hold on. It's okay to be pro-Kahungunu, but it doesn't mean you have to be anti everyone else. And then suddenly all of our in-laws and all of our other iwi who had held the mana on our pai for all these years started to feel that they didn't have a part to play. So we embraced everyone again. There was that, and the other thing was to accept the evolution of language. Language is evolving. We must create new words. We must create new sounds. And you and I both know, you know a kura kaupapa reo straight away. You know a kohanga reo. There was that. But I think what it was you need leadership, and you need someone who's going to stay in that space, and that's going to be their sole role is to drive the iwi language strategy. It can't just be 0.2 of someone's role. It can't just be auntie who's going to volunteer to do it. The reality is, if you're not getting paid, there's no accountability to a role. So I think when Kahungunu invested that into one person driving that strategy, they had Don Hutana, he kickstarted it, and then we had another couple of people, and then when I picked it up, I sort of had to evolve the strategy. Now, that was part of my own thinking as well, had to evolve, and I had to accept that, well, not everyone aspires to be a grammarian like me. Not everyone is going to aspire to be a panekiretanga graduate. Not everyone is learning te reo so that they can have great whai kōrero and great karanga. So that was that whole ararau thing. And even my own thinkings had to evolve because I had my own perception on what a quality reo looked like. So it's been good. There's been a lot of compromise and there's been a lot of evolution of thinking. And I always look at, in Kahungunu, the alpha and the omega of the Māori language world is Timothy's at one end of the spectrum, who has an unapologetic, brash, confrontational, arrogant strive for excellence, and he's unapologetic. Then you've got Liz Hunkin at the other end, who embodies the ethos of Te Ao Tarangi, which is humility. So when I got into my role, I thought, how do I get the alpha and the omega into the kohanga nunui, or into the equilibrium, so that we can pull all those ararau together? And we did. We finally got. I mean, Timoti can now say kahungunu and tato in a sentence without choking or making a joke. So those are my performance measures. When Timoti and Liz can sit at the same table and agree on something, then that's huge. But, I don't think Kahungunu's doing anything groundbreaking. I think we're just ensuring that language is a priority and accepting that all people will have various reasons for learning the language and they all have different aspirations and dreams. And so it involved me of having to pull my head out of the proverbial. That's my long answer to your very simple question.
Very comprehensive. Very comprehensive.
He whakautu ararau.
Ararau.
I get a bit passionate about this stuff, so.
That's wonderful.
Yes, yeah.
He pai kia rongo I te wana. Yeah, because a lot of our listeners, he iti te mōhio ki te reo Māori. So they haven't got command of the language. Some of them are beginners, and a lot of them, I know a lot of people that are listening that I've had feedback from, they do e mara mana ki te reo Māori, and even though this podcast is done in English predominantly, and paku reo rua nei, they find it quite inspiring and invigorating to hear speakers such as yourself sharing their kōrero.
It's so important, and that's been part of me with all of our real stuff that we're doing. It's like, well, hold on, the message has to be heard. It's one thing to hear the word, and then it's another thing to hear the message. And if we're gonna maintain this exclusive attitude of ko te reo te Māori o te Māori mana motuhake and all those things, and you have to speak the reo yada yada. So when I had my symposium last year, Te Reo Ki Tua, it was all bilingual. Majority of it was English because the message had to be heard. And what was that symposium about? It was about getting 700 people from Kahungunu, give me 2 days of your 365-day year, and let yourself be inspired. And I think that, you know, when I look at kurereo is great. And we all know, you go to Wharehuia's class and you'll get taught 50 whakatauki. You'll go to Timoti's class and get taught 50 new words or new structures, and you'll be lucky if you remember one. But my thing is, come here. Acquisition is the overarching goal. But it's not. It's saying, come and be kahungunu for 5 days, hang out with like-minded people, and recharge your battery. Because that's one thing that a lot of people weren't doing in kahungunu. When I looked at the pie graph, I had to, of everything, all those ararau, I had to find our niche. And what was happening was that no one was expending any energy on the reo champions, and they were getting burnout. We all know when you're trying to revive reo, it's like pushing tickle up the hill sometimes. So what I say is actually come in, be inspired, and go back out, and then come back in 3 months, get back on the diet, because I always use the diet analogy. Go out and come back and just keep recharging, because when you look, to me, a language revitalization strategy, the language is only the bullseye of the dartboard. You know, that's only a small part. And we get so hung up sometimes thinking that it's the grammar, it's the sound, it's all of that, but it's actually people. And if you haven't got people in your strategy, kāre take. So it's all social engineering, brothers. It's how do we capture, convert, and hold. And if you can't get people in your reo strategy, then kokore he take. Getting a bit passionate again. You better throw me another question. I'm going to go on my own tangent.
No, it's great. You know, it's like we're in te hahi o te reo.
Te kauhau.
Yeah, so kaufau mai, you know.
You gotta control me, because I'll go hundi and I just get so passionate. And that's probably the hard thing. You go to these symposiums, and then when you come out of them, you're just so passionate. And when you see someone who just doesn't give two flying craps about the reo, and you get all hundi on them, and you, shame on you, how dare you. Your ancestors would be ashamed. And then you got to get over yourself. Yeah. But it's great. And I think that's the success of kahungunu. You just have those events throughout the year and keep people energized. And they need the Sunny Bills. Paraone, you're a real Sunny Bill. Pania is a real Pamela Anderson. Leon is a real Arnold Schwarzenegger. You know, you need the pin-ups, and that's important.
Ina he nui o mahi roto I nā mahi reo, not that we've deviated from our kaupapa, but to sort of tie into the reo and the regional, the tai whenua takiwa of kahungunu, is perhaps share with us some of the unique kupu of kahungunu or sayings, and your thoughts too on mita. I mean, we've done a segment on mita, and te korau ki tō tāua tuahine ki a Hana, and she shared some ngaitahu, e tahi o nā kupu o ngaitahu. So maybe kōrero about some of the kupu and your thoughts on mita, because I know o te tangi ki a mātou, te tangi o te reo.
Very good.
Yeah,
very good point.
Te tangi o te reo.
Well, it's my PhD thesis. It's something that I love, and I realize that dialect doesn't turn everyone on, but I mean, that's what PhD is about. You know, you have to find something that turns you on, and dialect does for me. So, and I think the reason is because for me, being born and raised in Australia, and then I come back to my kahungunu people, out of my 10 tribes, kahungunu is the one I have the strongest affiliation with. And I think, well, what's my identity as kahungunu? Is identity as kahungunu determined by dialect? Because when you first start to learn the language, that's your assumption, that there's a dialect and we say things different. You know, you mentioned te tangi, and that's a really good point, because dialect is purely based on sound. So I like that tangi o te reo. When you look at kahungunu, right, when you go up into the Waiata area, and that's probably where you have your last bastion of Kaumātua native speakers there, it's a melting pot of dialectal sounds. So you go into Nuhaka, and you've got that strong East Coast sound, but then it's sort of mixed with that guttural Waiata sound. So you meet someone like Jim Whanga, kei te pē hawe, kei anga ngātu, kātai ho, kātai mo, kei te buaratu. I was like, ha? Kātai mo, kei te buaratu, ni kātou te kōro, ni kātou te kōrero. Kei te pohara tau, kei te pohara tonu, kāre tai muni, kāre aku muni, or kāre he muni, kāre kau he muni, kāre tahi. So there you've got that, but then you've got you got your awos and you've got your akunis. That's a strong East Coast sound, right? Then you come into Whakaki, and they've got their own sound, like Uncle Enoka and them. But the thing is that just because you're from Whakaki doesn't mean you all talk the same. So, you know, when you did kōwhaoro and I did matangiro, kiawa ni. It's not a kiawa, it's more of a kiawa. Kiawa ni, kei te paki mai rā, e paka haere mai ni te roi, kiawa ni, You get that sound. Then you're coming back up into Waiata, and you listen to Aussie and and Aussie was like a machine gun. And then we had another sound, you know. So those are the sounds you have there. Then when you come into here taunga is probably the hardest to determine sounds. But when you look at dialect, right, I always look at dialectal indicators. First one is body parts. You know, if it's a tara, a teke, a nono, kōwha, or I don't know the other words. You got your whero, your tau, your kumu. So kumu is the generally accepted kahungunu one. I think we're a tara. And then we're a mahunga. We prefer the pakihiwi as opposed to the pokowhiwhi. We're not a mātinga. The only reason we use mātinga is because it's in the scriptures.
Or in the himene.
Or in the himene. In the ringatus, we love the mātinga. Piko nei te mātinga. We love the tau. Not
You
that
love the tau.
You love the tau.
But, you know, we drop that in and you get a tau. And then the other things that you'll hear is that there's a preference for the ngia. I'm not saying we don't use the hears and the tears, but if you go into Waiata and you listen to these they love the ngia. Karanga ngia. We love the tangas, takuhoki tanga, as opposed to the hungas that you hear a lot of in Tūhoi.
Yeah.
See, for me, the Tūhoi love the hea and they love the hanga. But the other thing that we forget about dialect is that it was individual preference. These people did not say, I'm kahungunu, so I'm going to say tau. And there's no way that someone who was born in Wairoa would speak the same as someone who was born in Wairarapa. It's impossible. The hardest thing is when you're looking at dialect is that you don't prescribe a dialect to say, it's like what's happening up in Tūhoi. You don't say, and that's the one thing at the Runanganui, you don't say, we are all going to say kaite now and haite. No, that's how I write it because that's how I say it. But I'm not prescribing that you must drop the G or you must start writing tau or you have to write moho. Because you say moho, you're going to start writing M-O-H-O. I don't believe that we should start changing the orthographic conventions based on sound because we would never do it with English.
Yeah.
You wouldn't get away with it with English. What's you up to? What you doing? Oh, you know all that hoary English that we speak. So for me, it was saying to Kahungunu, don't get hung up on dialect because when I hear people talk about the Tūhoi sound, there is a lot more to a Tūhoi sound than people who drop their Gs.
Yes.
Yep.
And I hear it because I'm from outside and you would hear it too. And it's because of what I hear in those Tūhoi native speakers that helps me differentiate what the Kahungunu sound is. And you and I both know there's a lot more. And it's the same when I go into your fellas' way. I always do the e anas and the pewhias and me koe tahi and kia koe tahi.
And you love it.
And you love it, that wee, e pewhiana koe kare. No tainui tēnei tagata.
So you could say, when it comes to dialect or te tangi o te reo, it could almost be individualised. Eh? So I've shared that opinion as well, that you could live in one house, speak, and your tamariki and that will learn the way that you speak, and it'll be totally different to your neighbours whom you may be bounded by blood.
Exactly, and that's what's happened. We get so hung up on autonomy, tino rangatiratanga, and we think that we have to speak. If someone speaks like this, they are more kahungunu than someone else.
Yep.
If someone says konohi, kanohi, pakihiwi, pokohiwi, pokowhiwhi, oh, e hoa. But the thing is, that like with my kids are saying how. Hardly anyone says how anymore.
You know how many people say good God now? As well.
That's becoming a dialect. It's a smart-ass dialect.
Yeah.
It's the same with, it's like us with boy.
Yeah.
That was Materoa. Materoa Hainga started that, and I get it. I get my back up a bit when I see other people using it who aren't in our group.
Yeah.
It's not mine, but it's just me. But it is, bro. Like it's individual preference.
Yep.
And those ko-mātua would have spoken a language that was relevant to their time, and a lot of it is slang. Like I'd be mortified to think that someone would listen to this interview in 100 years and think that I was speaking Kahungunu English dialect, especially with my grammatical mistakes. And you can't get dialect from writings as well. It's like me, Paraone. I would research Paraone's Facebook posts and say, "Ooh, that must be Whare Puhunga dialect." It's ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous.
Yep.
Just in the evolution of language and talking about myself, there was a time there where I used a lot of akene, and that was because I was with a lot of Tūhoi speakers. We don't say akene. I've never said ekene or akuni. I might use akuni if I'm with a Ngāti Porou speaker, but that's my sort of that's something that I found I do a lot. I don't even think about it. That's sort of how you do it when you're up here. Or if I'm in ki te haere, ki te taitokero, I'll use e mara.
Yeah, you always refer to me as mara.
Yeah.
Taku whakahoki au koe e tai.
Yeah.
They call it a chameleon.
Yeah.
Leon told me that because he said, "You're a chameleon."
Yeah.
I said, "A comedian?" He's like, "A chameleon."
Yeah, both. You're a comedic chameleon. But now I've found I might be wrong, but I don't think we used in Tainui akua nei pea, how tūhoe use ake nei pea, or ake nei. But now, naturally, I say akua nei. I use our word, but in the way that tūhoe would use ake nei.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So, instead of saying akua nei pea or ake nei pea, I'd say akua nei pea.
Akua nei pea.
Yeah,
Oh,
and I recorded myself a while ago speaking about something. I listened to myself, played it back, and I was surprised to hear how many times I'd used akua nei like that, and I thought, whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, even I hear you say, you use, the word ngā, and you say nā.
Yeah.
And you could mistake it because of where you learned from, but I think it is, and how dialects happen is because you get so comfortable with your language, just like we do with English, that you just, you...
Yeah, I do. Some of my,
colloquialise
you're
the whole
right.
thing, yeah.
One time I came home, I te kōrero mao ko ngā huia.
Yeah.
And she says to me, you said e nari. And I said, no, I didn't. She goes, yes, you did. You said e nari instead of e ngari.
You said nā huia.
It just came out, that. But not every word I'll drop the G, but it's just something.
But it's just, yeah.
Same. And that's why people get so hung up. And it's like, well, this is a living language. And I know exactly what you mean, because Taringa noticed it with me. She's like, you talk different to Selwyn Parata than you talk to Timoti. I said, well, when I'm talking to Timoti, my reo is normally cynical. It's just sarcasm. It's smart ass all the time. Then when I'm talking to Selwyn, then I chuck on my Ngāti Parotwang.
Right.
When I'm up in Ruatoki, I talk different to how I do in Ruatahuna. But it's funny because when I go to Ruatoki and I want to get up and mihi in the whare, I always, e hika mai kia ora tātou, because that's when the identity comes out.
Yeah.
And I get what you mean, Brad, because there is a time when in the evolution of my language that I thought, well, hold on, we don't say pakeke, we say pakeke, and I know what you mean, because there's a lot of kiwaha that I was learning that the kaumātua here would have no idea what it meant.
Yes.
Tau areare.
Yeah.
See, we wouldn't use the word tau areare, we would use matapiko
Same
or
with us.
kanepo.
We'd say kaiponu.
Yeah, see? So I think there is that time, and that's probably the caution to second language speakers, because, there are words that are unique to iwi. And I think that one thing we don't do enough of is that we don't deliver the message. We deliver the word, but we don't deliver the message.
Yes.
And I think that it's good to use words from other iwi, and it's good like how you and I go up north and we go places and we use those words. But if I use the word uta uta down here, no one would know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Not a uta uta.
Oh, everybody knows what that is.
Well, because and the other thing is we love borrowed words. Kahungungu, the generation is still ones for borrowed words.
Yeah.
We love borrowed words. So, the panoni and how we've tried to revive all these ancient words.
Yeah.
If I want to talk to my kaumātua, I've got to go back to tēnei, I've got to go back to kremi, I've got to go back to titi for deed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, I've been given the privilege of speaking on my marae too, and the amount of head scratching from the taumata, like, what is this fella saying?
Taumata? Pai pai.
Oh, taumata, pai pai.
See, look at that, taumata.
Yeah.
Straight
and
away.
then, you revert it back to, because mena ko te whainga, ka marama te hunga areare, so you do refer back, but as a second language learner, I think it's great. I talk about permission. Give yourself permission to learn every word and to use every word for the sake of knowing it, and then go and find out where that word comes from and all that, because you're limiting yourself.
It's like Tamati really when they questioned hapori, they said, well, hold on, that word, when they researched it, it comes through taitokoro. But their word for that would be kāinga. Communities were kāinga, or the kāinga.
The kāinga.
The most trick sound that I love is whānau apanui, because you've got a fusion of coastie with mātātua. You listen to Rikirangi Gage, he's sort of like a half mātātua, half...
Ngāti Pro.
Sometimes I just make conversation up with him so I can hear him talk, because it's got a really interesting sound, those apanuis.
Yeah.
They're right in the middle between two Māori, strong Māori language. Even that, how when Hemi Hinare and Api in them used to say Māori.
Maori, yeah.
Timoti, Po,
When they're speaking English, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
According
And
to
I've
the
started
Maori.
doing it.
Yeah.
That particular generation. Just back to the message, that's how one of my friends who is of the Baha'i faith explained to me what Baha'i is. That it's not about he said, if you can imagine the divine message as the light, and then all the different hahi or religions is actually the lamp that holds that light. So Catholicism is, got their lamp, how they hold the light, and then Anglican. But it's not actually what's holding the light, it's actually the light. is how he explained it to me. And he said, Baha'i is about acknowledging all the, and no, I'm not Baha'i, and I'm not doing a plug for the Baha'i faith, but that's how he explained Baha'i to me. And that's what I keep thinking because you've used that a couple of times now, that it's about the message.
You go to a tangi, right? And we have a responsibility to use high-level words of praise to that person. You know, there is a whai kōrero language that when you greet the dead, you use the highest echelons of language. I get it. But the message is actually we're here to warm the hearts of the whānau pani. You're here to touch the hearts of the whānau pani. And even people who don't speak Māori will still understand a good whai kōrero, which is delivered with emotion and it's delivered with compassion and it's delivered to touch hearts. That's what I'm talking about, the message. You look beyond the words. That's what you're there for. You are there to heal the hearts of the whānau pani. You know what I mean? And that's what I mean about the message. We can't lose sight of the message because we can get caught up in the nuts and bolts of grammar and fluty academic language or whatever, which is great. And that's what I like about Po. Po, to me, is the best practitioner of whai kōrero in the nation because he knows how to touch hearts. He knows how to use a language that is intelligible by his audience. You know, and that's the key. You're up there, bro. Parani, you get up and you know, you don't always use rākau, but you know when to and you know how to capture an audience. It's the same with Po. You capture an audience.
And I think you've captivated our listeners today.
Paia.
Me māua, tika.
Ai.
You know, ako rite tonu tā tāua ki te ia tāo e nā wai e noho ana tāua he pai ki te whakarongo ki a koe e hoa. Me o whakaro katoa. It's the same when everyone we speak to, neha.
Yeah.
He rawera wātu. It's when you get put in the space, you know, ka rere anō e tahi whakaro and you're not being, you know, we're not mucking around and stuff, you know. Now, to put you on the spot in closing, because I think ko tai ki te wā, I asked you to think about making up on the spot some kōrero pepeha or whakatauki about that describes kahungunu or your people, what you see for tomorrow.
Kahungunu tangata reo, kahungunu tangata ora. The livelihood and the future of our identity of kahungunu rests with our language.
Ka pai, he rawe tērā.
Tēnā kōrua.
Pai.
Tēnā koe, paia.
It was very nice to have serious conversation for once.
It was.
And it was quite refreshing.
E tino pai rau atu. Yep.
Te tino mutunga mai nei o te pai rau atu marika.
Mo te he moto nu atu.
Paia.
Ki tū o te pai tawhiti.
Awa, kia ora kōrua.
Tēnā rau atu koe hoa ane mau e mihi atu ana ki a koe. Tēnei te tuku i a koe hoa. Tatere tēnā rau atu koe mo i whakawāte i a koe ki te kōrero mai ki a mao o tira ki ngā taringa o te motu o te ao. Nō rere mihi nei ki a koe.
Nōku te honore. Kia ora tātou.
Paia.
Paia.
I always enjoy our kōrero.
Yeah. Yep.
Seems like we could have just kept talking, neha.
Oh, yeah. Like I keep saying, it's only surface scratching.
Yeah, there were some points there in the conversation I wanted him to sort of, but I was conscious of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure our koutou mai te hunga whakarongo, all our listeners, I'm sure you enjoyed that session. Not only the kōrero about kahungunu, but sharing his passion about the revitalisation of te reo o kahungunu and Māori language in general.
Yeah, definitely. Especially when a lot of people are starting to question where, if they're on a real journey or just wanting to start off, what it looks like from an iwi perspective.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people may not know the efforts that a lot of people were doing behind the scenes. So I think there was only a glimpse into what Tatere does for his iwi. Yeah.
Well, even the part there, I wasn't until after he said it, when he referred to him being brought up in Australia.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's inspirational in itself.
I could imagine, most listeners go, wow.
Brought up in Australia, doesn't go to kohanga reo, no kura kaupapa.
Doesn't need power.
But he felt that, you know, the wairua, I guess, to return home and learn the reo. So I guess if you've got the drive, you know, you can learn your language. And then now he's an excellent speaker of te reo.
Yep.
He's sort of done full circle. So, mihi ana ki aia.
Ai,
Me tā tātai kaupapa kōrero.
Ko rangatira Ngāti Kahungungu i aia.
Koina. And tāwa o tira tātou i aia.
Ai.
Yeah.
Kia ora.
And to finish it off, we're going to launch into te Waiata o te Wiki. And we've actually had a few kahungunu, Waiata kahungunu on here. We've had rongo mai wahine, tūtira mai ngā iwi. So we're going to pick one of the old-time greats, one of the classics e te iwi. composed by Praere Tomoana, one of the prolific composers in his day, and he composed in the time of Apirana Ngata and those greats. Tā Waiata o te Wiki is Tahi Nei Taru Kino, one of the old-time solid gold favourites.
One of the old times, taking you back.
Nō reira, whakarongo mai. Tahi nei taru kino, mahi whai aipo, kei te wehenga, aroha kauana, haere maira, ki aha neira, te aroha tino nui, haere mai. Kore au e noho, o atu takuringa, kei huri ke koe, whakakaito ai muri, haere maira. Ki aha neira, te aroha tino nui, haere mai. Titiro atua au, tahuri ke koe, kei roto ia koe, pirangi mai ana, haere maira. Ki aha neira, te aroha tino nui, haere mai. It's got one of those melodies about it, eh?
Yeah, it's almost nostalgic for the ones that grew up around the feet of the table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The feet of the table.
The feet of the table, picking up change.
It's definitely one of those Waiata that conjures up memories.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
it does.
but it's timeless.
Yes, we should learn to sing these songs again. I think we compose a lot of songs and then we forget a lot of them as well. So.
That's right. To me, as a composer, and I know we've talked about this in one of our other sessions about how whakataitai or competition has influenced how we compose Waiata today, as opposed to how Waiata was composed yesteryear.
Yeah.
Tahi Nei Taru Kino for me is one of those songs that exemplifies everything that should be in a Waiata.
Yep.
Probably more importantly is the kupu.
Yep.
And then a good tune to go with the kupu. Yeah, it's not a long Waiata, and it's something you can listen to a couple of times and pick the kupu up.
And the themes are timeless.
Koina, te kaupapa.
Yep.
Te kaupapa. And ko te aroha.
Ko te aroha.
Hoi noe hoa, e mihi ana ki a koe.
Kia ora.
I tā tāua noho, me tō tāua hoa a Tatere. And to all our listeners, you can go back and listen to the kōrero again. And if you want to learn the Waiata, Tahi Nei Taru Kino, and look up some of the kōrero about Praere Tomoana, then kūkara atu. Find that on Google, and we'll be back next week with Once Upon a Time.
Once Upon a Time.
Hoi no anei e mihi tinei kia koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Whakarongo ki te tangi a te korimako, kōrero flowing at the hook of force, kaupapa relevant, kaupapa out of bounds, kaupapa exigent, kaupapa paramount. Nā ko nā whakapiri mai ki te kaupapa tino whakahira hira, whakarongo pi kari mai, areare mai, o Taringa hare mai. We gotta gather up close everybody, gather up close everybody. Kani move that body, kani move that body.
Taringa. He mea tuku nā te wānanga o Aotearoa. To listen to more episodes, search for us on your podcast app and subscribe. Taringa. Whakarongo mai.